take projection.
Welcome everybody to Take It On Sports. I am TD. That is Greg. Greg, how you doing, man?
I am good. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. Survived what was apparently the hottest weekend ever in Houston, Texas, working a festival. So
Yeah.
I'm here, still alive.
Yes.
This is the big one, folks. It's the Alabama and SEC preview. So we know that's where we, I guess, make our money, so to say. But, well, yeah, at least it's probably our most exciting
Oh,
conversations for
definitely.
sure. But we'll kick it off with, of course, Crimson Tide. Um, and the theme of this season is change. It's a big,
Yeah.
big season of change. I mean, everything. We got a new offensive and defensive coordinator. We have a new quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, we lost what ended up being a first and a third overall draft pick. Just a whole lot of change coming on in the team, the coaching staff, the players. Let's start with those coordinator hires. Tommy Reese is our new offense coordinator. We'll start there. He not the sexiest hire, so to say, but
Right.
he I think I'll let you go here in a second. But I think he has potential. But go ahead, let's get your thoughts real quick. What do you think about Tommy Reese so far?
Well, you know what? You said, what a lot of people think. He's not the sexiest hire, maybe not the biggest splash ever. But obviously Saban sees something in him. I like the fact he's a young guy. Not so much set in his ways. Um, you know, and I think he's gonna add some excitement, some innovation. You know, Overall, I'm excited for the hire and look to see what he brings to it. 'Cause we were definitely critical of Bill O'Brien, as many were, and a lot of questions. Just because I think it was a lot of predictability, and Bryce saved him a lot. And I think we just got tired of the same old. And I think just getting a younger guy in there, not so set in his ways, has a chance to be innovative, really build his career. Because he's still in the process of getting his name out there as a successful coordinator. So he's looking to make his mark, his big break. And this is the way to do it. So I'm excited to see what he brings.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. And to add to it, I think from what I watched, the more I studied, I think he's a better situational play caller than O'Brien. Maybe,
Mm,
um, you know, he definitely seems to change up formation a lot and kind of adjust to what they're playing against. We've heard it all off season too that Alabama might return to the old like ground and pound, murder ball ways. If the line is that good, that remains to be seen. A lot of people love throwing 2012 out there, but that was literally maybe the best offensive line in college football history.
right. So that was
Um, but I do think we're going to see more running, more traditional pro style. But I
yeah,
also think it depends on the matchup and if the receiving
right.
core gels, like if we find a quarterback that can sling it, if we need to throw the ball, I think he'll spread it out more.
Exactly.
I think he'll, adjust to what we need. Um, And like you said, he's young and not set in his way, so he's gonna do it. He's gonna find ways to make things work.
Right.
I wasn't excited about it at first, but I think I've talked myself into the Tommy Rees hire. But we'll see. Um, um,
you know, the one thing I do think, a lot of the time, most of Saban's hires have been pretty successful. I think he realizes the Bill O'Brien thing didn't go as nicely as maybe it looked when it first got put in.
mhm.
Getting a big name, former NFL head coach. It seemed like a home run hire at the time. I think he really took time into this one to get it right because he knows, he's at the end of his career, so he wants to
Mhm.
end as great as possible. He doesn't want to go out like some of the older guys. Oh, he's getting old. The game's passed him by. So I mean, I think he really took this hire pretty seriously there, and he already said he loves Tommy Reese. And, and hear him say that about too many of his offensive coordinators. So
No, and yeah, we'll see. I had in my notes too from what I read up on him. More 2 and 3 tight end sets than we have been using, and more
yeah,
play action. And so hopefully, we got a couple good running backs back there. Um,
yeah,
it all depends on the quarterback situation, which I guess we can go into right now, since we're talking offense. Um, so yeah, obviously we lost Bryce Young, number one pet draft pick, Heisman winner, just an amazing quarterback. Part of our problem that we had last year, it seemed like Bill O'Brien's offense was just hope Bryce does something awesome, and he was such a good
yeah,
player that a lot of times he did.
yeah,
Um, but it probably
yeah,
cost us in a couple games, not
exactly,
utilizing other playmakers or not having kind of
hmm
a plan B and C to
exactly,
take some stress off of Bryce.
right,
So this year, we have a competition, as everyone knows, between Jalen Milrow, Ty Simpson, and Tyler. Is it Buchner or Buckner? I'm not sure. Um,
for sure.
the Notre Dame transfer who does know Tommy Reese's offense and
Hmm.
I guess has some potential. Was a decent recruit, but excuse me, was injured a bunch last season.
Right.
So he had a decent bowl game against South Carolina. Is that how they played? Um,
Yeah, he had like 3 or 4 touchdowns in that one.
yeah, pretty good bowl game. Some of the cons, or at least the negatives on him, or some people don't like his throwing mechanics. So we'll see
Mhm.
about that if that's improved. Obviously, we know Jalen Milrow, a playmaker, game breaker with his legs,
Right.
but you know, problems with his arm. Not very accurate at times. If he can improve as a passer, then maybe he can get in there. And then
Hmm.
I don't think we know much about Ty Simpson yet. We've seen him, he had trouble in the spring game, but we haven't seen him much on the field. Uh, do you
Right.
do you have any guesses on which way we'll go, or is this kind of the
Well,
typical like we've seen in the past?
for the longest, I was pretty confident it was gonna be Jalen Milrow, just because he has the most experience, and just with what he brings with his athleticism and his legs, brings a lot to just because you have to respect that when he's under center. There's been a lot of talk, and it's all speculation. A lot of people are saying it's Ty Simpson's job at this point. Who knows? Of course, we're never going to know until the Texas game. Honestly, we're going to see a lot of people play, and it still doesn't sound like anybody's really separating themselves. So, you know, we'll see how it plays out. During the summer, I liked how Milrow took some of the wide receivers with him down to Florida. They worked out during the summer at the start. I like that. And I thought, man, at that point, he's kind of pulling away, but it seems like it's still quite the contest. And who, I think we'll see week one everybody play, and at some point in the Texas game, whether it be to start the game or by the end, I think we'll kind of know who's the starter for the foreseeable future after that, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, we'll see them all playing first week, and I wouldn't be surprised with during the Texas game we go with the hot hand maybe, and then maybe see them all again the next week after that, just to kind of really figure out, unless someone just absolutely runs away with it. But uh,
Which
I also
really,
wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some, or at least I'm wondering if not surprised, if maybe Milrow will have some packages in there for him to utilize his
yeah,
legs.
exactly.
Maybe not necessarily like an old school Spurrier quarterback rotation, but just when we see something we like in the defense, maybe we can throw Milrow out there and use the read option and stuff to our advantage.
Because that man has a lot of talent.
Hmm.
So whether he's starting quarterback or not, we got to get him on the field because he's electric. We've
Yeah.
seen him bust so, and we see the potential there.
Hmm.
But even if he's not the quarterback, he definitely has to have some packages and get him on the field some way because he's way too electric to sit on the bench.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, as we saw so many stories this summer about Saban not naming a QB yet, and like no one's surprised. He's never done that with any QB
Wait,
competition. Um,
yeah, never happened, never will happen. And
yeah,
honestly, of course, that's the story of the summer. It's been a story since this whole off season. And honestly, that's not even, that seems to be everybody's main focus. But honestly, that's not even my biggest concerns at all. It's not the quarterback position, honestly. It's not, you know, a quarterback has really not been our issue for most of Saban's tenure. I mean, we won with everybody under center. There's never really been a time when like, man, the QB really was the reason why we didn't win.
hmm
We've not had that. So I'm not really. That's not really. I mean, it's of course the biggest talking point, and what everybody's focusing on. But there's a lot more things that I'm more interested in when it comes to how successful this team is going to be, more so than the quarterbacks.
yeah, I'm with you. And there's a lot of factors that go into how the quarterback will play. Is the line going to improve this year?
Oh yeah,
We got a new line coach too. Is it going to improve and protect the quarterbacks and give them time to throw the ball? Is it going to open lane to the running backs?
right.
Is the receiving court going to improve? It was very lackluster year from them last year. And granted, we've been spoiled as Alabama
Oh,
fans. We once had
we had
four
quite
first
the run.
round draft picks in the same receiving core. So
Quite
um,
the run of wide receivers as of late.
yeah, exactly. We don't, and that's not. Yeah, we're not even. That's not even counting. The Judy, Ruggs, Waddle, and Smith era. We're
Yeah,
going back to Julio, who was followed
exactly,
by Amari Cooper, who was followed by Calvin Ridley, and then those four. Like
exactly. We've had
we've
quite
been
the.
spoiled with at least one, absolute monster talent at the position for a while, and now kind of unknown. Jermaine Burton's back, Ja'Cory Brooks is back, Isaiah Bond. Um,
I mean, we have. I mean, there's definitely talent there. It's just a
mhm,
matter of who wants to be the man, who wants to step up, who wants to make the big risk, who wants to be the go-to guy. A lot of the problems and I even heard it in this camp, too many drops, and whether
mhm,
that be the defense or not. It's an old school saying: if it hit you in the hands, you got to catch the ball.
yeah,
And we've that's been our at times that's hurt us. Whether it be 2 years ago in the national title game, had some tough drops there. We've had saw some tough drops last year. But it's a matter of these old, especially the older guys. I mean, Jermaine Burton, he's I mean, at the end of the season, he seemed to have started getting it, but the first, I'd say, till November was pretty lackluster of a season. He
mhm,
seemed to really start coming into his own kind of in from the Auburn game on, and he had a decent bowl game. You like to see him step up. He doesn't even necessarily have to be the best wide receiver. You just want to see some leadership, and I think that was really missing last year.
mhm.
But I just want guys that want to go out there and be hungry and not drop the ball. I mean,
Yeah,
but
make those tough catches, make the big catches when we need them to. You got to make those third down catches for first downs. You got to
exactly,
catch
and
those wide open balls.
uh,
Yeah, Burton did end up being our leading receiver in both receptions and yards,
right,
by one
right,
reception and 3 yards over Ja'Cory Brooks. So,
yeah. And that's another guy, Ja'Cory Brooks. We've seen
mhm,
bits and pieces where he's looked amazing.
yeah,
Like
was the
2 years ago in the
hero.
Iron.
Yeah, the Iron Bowl 2 years ago caught the game tying pass.
I mean, and he, been up and down. And we still have a lot of young guys.
Mhm,
The saw time last year, but Kobe and um, excuse me, Kobe and who's shoot, I can't even think of everybody else. But and then of course the JUCO transfer Malik Benson, like everybody's
mhm.
been like he's gonna be awesome. So you would like to see him maybe step into that star role because he definitely had a lot of talk coming in, and I've heard good things at times that camp and stuff, and from the spring. So hopefully we'll see the hype that was when he came into the program there.
Yeah, and then it's worth mentioning too that tight end transfer from Maryland, CJ Dippre.
Yeah.
Um, he's kind of got a little hype around him, so at least can add a solid pass catching option to replace Cameron Latu. Um, but yeah, that's it's going to take a lot, and I think a lot of the offense, at least early, is going to be on Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams,
Yeah.
um, and some of those
No.
backs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and then everybody's saying that we're going to focus more on the running game.
Hmm.
And but I mean, we got to stay. We're back to having a stable of backs. There was some question, didn't seem as deep, but I mean, Jace is back, Roydell, and then those two freshmen, Justin Haynes and Richard Young. I mean, those guys for the foreseeable future, it's going to be a talented back. Just a matter of that line getting nasty again, being the dominant force that we've become accustomed to, opening the holes, doing the necessary things, and running at the right times is another key thing. When we get those goal, we're at the 2 yard line. You want to see us power the ball in, get that touchdown running that thing, because it was maddening at times. Even though Bryce is excellent, the why we're in shotgun passing 3-4 wides
Yeah.
from the 2 yard line. My
Yeah,
goodness.
exactly. Yeah, that nothing pisses off an Alabama fan more. um, but yeah, so we'll see. You know, it's it's totally like kind of the unknown going into this year on the offensive side, but
A lot of unknowns, but you see a
a lot of potential.
lot of potential for greatness. I mean,
Hmm.
people are down, and of course, it's the easy talking point. Bama's done. This is the end. I mean, it's good clickbait, good. It's gonna bring the Alabama fans to the comments and your shows, so we
Yeah,
know how that goes. um,
absolutely. On the defensive side, of course, we have a new old coordinator and Kevin
mhm.
Steele. Again, and one that didn't really excite the fan base.
No.
But maybe as the summer's gone on, people have kind of calmed down and been like, you know what, okay, we see it.
Hmm.
The good thing is that he's definitely going to be an extension of what Nick Saban wants. Um,
Yeah.
he already knows what he wants, and obviously
Yep.
they've adjusted to the modern game. He had success at Auburn with those defenses. Didn't really work out at Miami last year. Just maybe wasn't a good fit. Um, Maybe they had more personnel issues than they thought.
Hmm.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, what I like about him is he seems to be stressing a couple things. One, just getting back to fundamentals and having everyone do that. That old Saban mantra. Do your job. Um, if you do your job and the other 10 guys do your job, then the defense as a whole has done its job. And
Right.
that's been the thing with our best defenses, and also to limit and erase the mental errors that have plagued us the past few seasons because
Man.
they have been so maddening on the defensive side of
Oh.
the ball. Blown
Oof.
assignments, missed tackles, dumb penalties. Yeah, and so that's what
Yeah.
we hope we'll get. No more Will Anderson, obviously, and again, not as bad as on the offensive side, but a lot of last year was hoping that Will would make a big play in the backfield. And if he
Mhm.
didn't, then it was a toss up. But what do you got to say about the defense this year?
You know, I like what I've heard so far. I heard that the defense is back to being nasty. We've had talent, but I think a lot of people have seen it. We've gotten soft. We've gotten away from what made us. And first and foremost, it starts with the nasty defensive line. The last couple of years have been very soft up front, not getting a good pass rush, not and, and we're getting back to that. It seems like Kevin Steele, old school guy, so he's going to bring that. I think he's kind of brought it back, kind of that swag that we don't want to give up points. You want to be out there, you want to make them quit. We're gonna get back. I think we're gonna try to get back to that. But the biggest thing is getting that defensive line back and nasty, getting in the backfield. Because for a while, that defensive line was just amazing to watch. I mean, you can see the 15, 16, and even before that, like our defensive line was everywhere.
Hmm.
uh, there's several stars in the NFL now. But the last couple years we were soft, and I think we're gonna start getting back to what we were. And you start big up front, that's gonna make it easier for the secondary because the secondary we know that they're gonna be on an island at times, and we have a lot of talent in that secondary, but it gets a lot easier when that defensive line is getting pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, that's getting pressure on the quarterback and taking away the run game. And if we can do
Mhm.
that, limit teams under 4 yards carry, under three, then you
Exactly.
can really force them to pass. And then we already know
Hmm.
what they're doing, so we can focus more
Yeah.
on that. Like you
Yeah.
said,
You
there's a
get them in
lot of talent
there
back there in that secondary. I think that
too.
even losing Jordan Battle and Eli Ricks and who else do we? Brian Branch. So I'm trying to think.
Yep.
Even losing all those guys, we got talent. We still got Kool Aid McKinstry. Got a couple transfers in, big transfers.
Hmm.
Terry and Arnold, Jalen Key,
Jalen Key.
Caleb Downs, a very highly touted freshman coming in.
Yeah, because they're already
Um,
Minka, which is a huge,
ooh,
huge comparison.
huge, right? Yeah. Um,
But it just shows you where that potential is that they're already mentioning such a
mhm.
name.
We got another guy named Devonte Smith back there. We'll
We
see
do.
if he turns out to be as good as Devonte Smith from the receiving side of the ball. Maybe the best receiver in Alabama history.
Yeah,
Um,
well.
you know, yeah, we got experience back there. Malachi Moore, a lot of
Mhm.
experience. Played maybe a little slumpy last year. Came out as a freshman and made some impacts. But yeah, it's what, like you said. I think the biggest thing is getting that nasty edge back, like that 2011.
Mhm.
Saban called them a hateful bunch. You need that kind of attitude,
Yeah,
and it starts with having the leader on the field. So we'll be interested to see who steps up as that guy.
yeah, exactly? Because
Yeah, a lot of
that was it's been missing.
uh huh.
Uh, Will was an amazing player, and I mean, people considered him the leader of the defense because he was the best player. But I never really saw a whole bunch, yeah, not on field leadership as maybe you want to see.
Yeah.
Um, there wasn't
Um.
really that captain out there that was like, "Hey, this is where you need to go. You need to go here." And we kind of we need to get back. I don't know if it'll be maybe Dallas Turner. Maybe he's gonna get in that role. Maybe it's Brass. Braswell. Who knows? Maybe they'll transfer from Georgia Marshall. Brought
Mhm.
him in. See what he does with the linebackers. But main thing with that linebacker is just need some one of them to be the leader of the defense, and then just don't can't miss tackles back there. A lot of missed tackles last year.
Yeah.
Linebacker
It's
spot.
especially in big situations or that led to big games, or
Mhm.
they'd miss a guy in the backfield. When they could have
Yeah,
wrapped him up in the backfield or at the line, and then
yeah.
he'd get 5 yards. That would help them get the first down the
Mhm.
next play. Yeah, you hear tales of like guys in practice goofing off or whatever, and you hear this from like former players that go there and come back like, man, it's if that happened in my day, one of the seniors or upperclassmen would have yanked you by the
Dom-
back and would have got on your ass and put you back in place, made you do your job.
Yeah.
But no Nabargo Helms this year, obviously. Henry Tua who's depending hot and cold with Bama fans.
Yeah. I mean, long term, I think he's gonna make a great coach because he seemed to always know what was going on, but missed a lot of tackles. He seemed to be in the right spot, but didn't
Just
quite.
didn't finish it. Yeah. but yeah, there's potential there. You mentioned some of these players already, and Tim Smith on the lines, another one that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people have high hopes
Yeah,
for
and
him to
Jay,
make
of
a
course,
really
uh,
big impact.
and Big Jaheim Oates,
Yeah, big boy.
kind of
Uh,
Mark Mount Cody type.
yeah, 6'5", 328. That's a big boy.
He's lost a
Uh,
lot of weight.
yeah, and that's slimmed down for him. But like we said with Kevin Steele, he's about going back to fundamentals. Just everybody do your job, don't
Do
miss
your
your
job.
assignment, and with that, again, with the talent we have, when that comes together, that's when guys can make their plays. It's when you're trying to do too much. That was something that kind of Toa did a lot. Trying to do
Yeah,
somebody else's job. Which is great that you know what everybody's job is, but you don't need to know what your job is. Do your job.
you need to do your job,
Let everyone
and
else
that's
do theirs. Yeah.
last year. I think everybody, like you mentioned, was looking for Will to make the big play, the
Hmm.
Superman play, and didn't so much happen last year. He still had great numbers, still, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, All American.
Hmm.
But I think there's just that 2021 season was so phenomenal that there was no way that that was going to be duplicated last year.
No.
And
Yeah.
the double, the triple teams, all the holding that never got called.
Hmm.
But at times, Madden too, because he wanted to do so much. He had those couple of those a lot of offsides that wasn't
Hmm.
there before because he wanted to jump. He wanted to make that play so badly. It took away from some of the stuff because it seemed like he had a lot of pressure on him that he knew he had to make the play in order for the success to be there. But
Yeah. And the one thing you really do hope that the return of the ball hawking Alabama defense comes back.
oh,
Those
yes,
mid 2000s defenses, the 15, the 16.
mhm.
Obviously, we'll never have one where we scored like that ridiculous amount of defensive touchdowns again.
Yeah,
That was just an amazing season. But you'd like to see more turnovers.
yeah,
It's been one
not a
thing the
lot.
past few years, yeah, just not creating turnovers. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what you really need, especially with like new quarterback
Hmm.
and inexperienced offense. Like if you can set them up better, give them shorter fields,
Yeah,
get them confidence. Uh,
exactly. Yeah, they're starting at the 45 after a pick or a
hmm.
fumble. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. And then moving on special teams, we're good there. Will Reichard
Yeah,
back again.
Will Record.
The what's the Australian James Burnip back to punt. Kool Aid back
Mhm.
as one of the best return men in the country, at least on
Yeah,
punts. We'll see who emerges as maybe a kick returner this year.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, special teams we should be good.
yeah. Should be
That's
good.
one of probably the place that we most can along beside head coach place
Most.
Alabama fans can be not worried about
That's
this year.
yeah, exactly.
As far as our schedule goes, begin with Middle Tennessee at home, and then the
Mm-hmm.
big one, Texas, coming to
Yeah,
Bryant Denny Stadium. Obviously a close one, a scary one last year that maybe was
yeah.
a a, a precursor, kind of a warning sign that
Of what the season
to
might be.
what the season was going to bring, and it kind of rang true. And we'll learn a lot. We mentioned it last week in the Big 12 preview, but we'll learn a lot about both tems
Both teams.
in this
Yeah.
game. We might know who our quarterback is after that, or we might be like, oh Lord, we're in trouble. Um, or our defense might hold in Quinn Ewers or Archie Manning, if you believe some rumors. Arch, excuse me. Uh, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
After
definitely.
Texas and our guy Sark comes back in week 3,
Yeah.
the next week they go to USF. Kind of a weird one, but hey, why not? Um, and then conference play begins, and we get Ole Miss at home. Then we go
Hmm.
at State and at A&M back to back. Um, and then Arkansas home, Tennessee home, big revenge game, of course. A bye, then LSU at home, and then in the season at Kentucky, Chattanooga, and then in Auburn for the Iron Bowl. Uh, so obviously, at the Jordan Hare, always a scary place. We hope after the 21 game that Bryce and those guys kind of maybe broke the curse, if you will, the Jordan Hare, the voodoo. Maybe they,
Yeah, I
uh,
would. Yeah,
just somehow erased it, or with that comeback, that amazing drive, and then overtime win. We'll see. Auburn's going to be an interesting
definitely
team. We'll get to them.
will see.
Um,
But
yeah,
as far as our schedule,
it's favorable.
it is favorable. We get a lot of our big games at home.
Hmm.
The one game that really stands out to me, and it really all just depends on how good they end up being, is that November game in Lexington right after
Hmm.
the LSU game.
Mm. Yeah.
And we know how big that LSU game usually is. And with Brian Kelly coming in and winning last year, it's going to be a big one this year. And no matter how that game goes, the following week, going up to Lexington, and there's a lot of hype about the Wildcats going into this season.
Hmm.
Well, that might be an interesting road game, just depending on how things go. Long way to go till we get there, but just looking at the schedule, that was the one that's really stuck out to me since schedules got dropped. Just because it's different. We're usually not playing an East team that late in the year, and then on the road at Kentucky. So that was when
Hmm.
I was like, that's interesting. But we'll see.
Yeah, that post LSU game is always can be a rough one.
Yeah, you saw it being Mississippi State, but they've kind of got away from that.
Hmm. Yeah, now the state has moved. Obviously, and that's the end of September this year. It's the
Yeah,
earliest it's been in a long time.
on. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's like you said, that LSU game is so always takes it out of you. Um,
Mhm.
it's such a hard thing to come down from, and going to like you said, could be a really tricky Kentucky team up there in Lexington on their home field.
Yeah.
They got O'Leary, a big transfer quarterback coming in. They get their
Hmm.
old offensive coordinator back, which we'll get to them.
Huge. Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously, I think we'd both agree Alabama's obviously a contender
Oh yeah.
um, in the SEC, but we'll see. Anything else you want to add on Alabama before we move to the rest of the conference?
Just a matter of turning the potential into reality.
Yeah.
It's a wait and see game.
And with that, yeah, let's move to the rest of the SEC. As we have been, we'll start with our contenders, and obviously, like I said, Alabama's one. They were in overtime. If they stop a, stop a 2-point conversion at LSU, or maybe make another
Mhm.
play or two. They against Tennessee. In that last drive we talked about last year, then
Yeah.
Alabama's in the SEC title game again.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
who knows what happens then? But so we've covered us. Georgia is obviously the next one you talk about, the two-time defending champs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of 3 or 4 big things for them this year. One, they also have a new QB and a new old offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mike Bobo back. Was it? He actually, his offenses there averaged actually 41 points a game when he was coordinator before for Georgia, but just never really a fan favorite, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
He's, his tenure was kind of like Bill O'Brien's.
yeah.
The first round.
Hmm.
If you looked at it from afar and didn't watch games or pay attention, but man, what? Why would anybody be mad about this? The stats are
Hmm.
there, put up points, but it was just situations. And you'd be like, what is going on?
Yeah, he was
And I
obviously
think a lot of
there.
Georgia fans would agree with that because
Yeah, he was there under Mark Rick from 07 to 14 before he got the
yeah,
head coaching job at Colorado State.
yeah,
And just never, his offenses were never, like I said, they kind of didn't get over the hump. They were that very old school offense. So you wonder
yeah.
if he's adjusted, what they'll lose. With Todd Munkin kind of modernize that offense for them.
Mhm.
Turned Stetson Bennett into a 2-time national champion winning quarterback.
And
So
not only that, I mean, he turned him into. I mean, by the end of the Stetson Bennett years, I mean, he was no longer if you watched a lot of Georgia football, I mean, he wasn't even considered just a guy that. I mean, he was doing big things. It wasn't just like he
Mhm.
was there and he just handed the ball off. Or I mean, he was key to their success. So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing is that everybody's like, well, they have a lot of talent there in that Georgia, uh, QB room, and they do. And of course, when you're at Georgia's level, you're going to bring in some of the best quarterback. But I
Hmm.
think people are kind of taking for granted kind of what the last, at least, especially last year, just how good he was, how good Stetson was, and so be I think a lot of there's a lot of guys saw some cleanup last year, but none of these guys have been the guy. It looks like Beck will be the starter, but I mean he hasn't been the man yet, and it changes a lot from cleanup duty to being the actual guy when you're playing the number ones from every school. So,
Yeah.
but as we know, Georgia has a lot of talent there. Two-time defending champs. Definitely not the toughest schedule in the world. So I
No,
mean,
that's yeah.
everything is good in Athens, at least on paper.
That yeah, that's my it's one of my other notes. Obviously they lost a lot on defense, but like you mentioned, they're in reload mode. So, they lose what, 5 draft picks on defense alone, first rounders, but they got guys that are potential first rounders right behind them. So you don't worry too much about that defense falling off.
Yeah, defense is stacked. They are well coached. They
Yeah.
have two excellent coordinators. I mean, we know Schumann. A lot of people was hoping maybe he was coming back home to be the DC for a little bit.
Hmm.
But stay there, and we know how good. We
Coach
know
Coach
not
Boom, Will Muschamp.
excellent defensive coordinator. I think he's past the point of head coaching, but still an excellent defensive coordinator. So I mean, that defense, it's gonna be nasty as they want to be, and they're at the prime of
And
being
even
one of the best defenses.
yeah, and even a third coordinator really, and head coach Kirby Smart.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, and they're that nasty. They have that nasty mentality that
Mhm.
we talked about that's missing from the Alabama D. And then you mentioned the schedule. Probably easiest schedule in the SEC, maybe easiest
Mhm.
schedule of any national title contender, maybe say for Michigan.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I think forget what we talked about. Michigan at least has to go like to Penn State or something, right?
Right.
Georgia, UT Martin, Ball State, home for South Carolina, which South Carolina last year on a hot streak, but they get them in Athens.
Yeah.
Then home for UAB, and then and
Mhm.
to Georgia's credit, were supposed to play Oklahoma this year, but the Sooners joined the SEC. They nixed that contract or whatever.
Right.
They go at Auburn, which could be tricky, but probably not. I don't think Auburn's. They're
They're
probably
not.
if Hugh Freeze
They're
is going to
probably
turn
not
them
there.
around. Not
They're
yet.
not there.
Not that yet. Yeah. Um, and then we got where was I? Kentucky at home, at Vandy, bye week, the cocktail party, Missouri and Mississippi, and Missouri and Ole Miss at home. Then in the
Mhm.
season at Tennessee, that's the big one, and then at Georgia Tech. That Tennessee game is going to, that's going to be the big one. I'm sure.
Right. Yeah.
Neyland Stadium will be rocking. Of course, depending on what Tennessee has
How
done until then,
Right.
that could be a decider, like a East title game, basically.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, Georgia's their questions this year are, is Carson Beck the real deal at quarterback? Can the
Yeah.
offense keep humming under Mike Bobo? Because the
Mhm.
defense probably do its job,
Yeah.
and then that schedule allows them to make mistakes, but maybe still win. Kind of like the Missouri game last year. Like maybe they can look horrible for 3.5 quarters and do just enough to win the game still. You do
Exactly.
wonder if maybe that easy schedule and something the talent loss and just the transition on offense, that if this could be a year, and we've seen it from Alabama and other contenders too, where they kind of roll through their regular season schedule, but once they play another heavyweight, another premier program, maybe that's when they get exposed,
Yeah.
and losing either an SEC title game or a playoff game. But and then of course, it's a intangible really, but it's hard to three-peat, and no team has done it
Yeah.
since Minnesota in the 30s.
30s. Yeah. So I
Um,
mean,
you look at the
it's,
last few teams to go for it. Obviously, Alabama in 2013, and the kick six
yeah.
derailed that. And
Mhm.
so that's you see that like stuff like that happens. A once
Mhm.
in a lifetime play. Because
Yeah.
Alabama wins that, they're in the SEC title game. They beat who was it? Would have been in Missouri that
Missouri.
year. Yeah,
Yeah, Missouri. I'm
and
sure we
then
beat Missouri.
and then maybe
And
you can argue whether they would have beat Florida
beat
State or
Florida.
not. Jameis, that was a great
Mhm.
offense.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then let's see before that, USC, I guess, yeah, and they ran into Vince Young and
Yeah.
Texas
I
Longhorns,
mean,
and
and that was took a legendary performance to stop that
mhm,
three-peat. That was in the national title game.
yeah,
Still one of the most talked about national title games ever. And just Vince doesn't put him on the shoulder and does amazing things in that fourth quarter. I mean, at one point, they were up 10 or 14
mhm,
late in the game. So, I mean, so close right there. um,
yeah. Before that, it was Nebraska in '96, coming off titles in
mhm.
'94 and '95, and they ended up. Let's see, try to what happened there. Try
They
to
lost to Arizona State early. Jake Plummer beat them in the desert late at
right,
night.
right, right. That's right. Jake the Snake derailed their hopes early in the year, and they couldn't.
And then they lost. That was the first year of the Big 12, and I believe they still had a chance, but Texas
Texas
upset them in the
upset them
first
in the title game. Yeah,
12 Big 12 title game,
yeah.
and that was before Mac Brown was even the coach. that
And then was that
was
the year? Was it next year that Arizona State? Was that the year Arizona State made the Rose Bowl and had a chance to win a national title themselves?
yeah,
Or that the next year? And then
that
they,
was
Ohio State came right back on them.
yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, we got that right. Yeah, the Arizona State lost early in the year, and then the upset by Texas in the inaugural Big 12
Hmm.
championship game, and ended up beating the crap out of Virginia Tech in the Orange Bowl, but little consolation for a team with hopes of a
National
three-peat.
title.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
crazy
that
thing is
was
they came back and won the title the next year.
yeah, that was indeed.
Three.
Arizona State had a shot to win a national title that year.
Yeah. If they had beat Ohio State
Rose
in the
Bowl.
Rose Bowl, but
Yeah,
I think was it David Boston had a big game, if I believe, if
yeah.
memory
When it
serves
was,
me
it
right.
was the Plummer led the team down. Arizona State actually took the lead with like a minute and some change left, and then Ohio State just went
Mhm.
right back down the field and
Yeah.
was it scored a touchdown? Yeah, I think David Boston. Um, so that, and then let's see, the team with a chance before that. You have to go back pretty far. I think Alabama in 1980. Uh, they come off wins in 78 and 79, and 80 was Georgia national championship led by a guy named Herschel Walker. We hear he was pretty good, even if he is fucking psycho now. Um,
Yep. At one point he was.
yeah, but
At one point he was a.
yeah. Yeah, it's just hard to do. That year, like Alabama, getting toward the end of the Bear Bryant era. But let's see, like I said, coming off of back-to-back titles that year, they lost two games. They lost at Mississippi State, and then
Mhm.
a Notre Dame game. In the regular
Mhm.
season. It's just hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard
Yep.
because you can talk about you. It's not something you can see on the field, but that pressure does. Because Georgia, starts their
Exactly.
year off. Say they start off. Say they go into that Tennessee game unbeaten. They're 10-0. That's all any media outlet's going to talk about. Any Georgia story is going to be about three-peat, three-peat, three-peat. Is this the greatest team ever?
Mhm.
Great, blah blah blah. You can't.
It's
You
just hard.
know that
It's
that
just hard.
gets yeah. They're for
The
college
players
kids.
here.
Yeah,
I mean, we know how much social media means to everybody these days, especially the younger folks. So I mean, that's all they're gonna see,
yeah.
and pressure's gonna be there. they have the talent to do it. It's just a matter of do they do it.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and of course it's we know how hard it is, but I mean, if there's a team that's gonna do it, I mean, they have the perfect rest. They have the perfect team to do it. I mean, a head coach that knows what it takes to do it. We know, Kirby was right there. Knows all about the put yourself in the spot at Alabama
Mm-hmm.
to be a three. I mean, so I mean he's lived it, so he knows exactly to get the players' minds right as possible as much as you can for that situation. So I mean the talent's there, the coaching is there. It's just a matter of are they going to be able to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting. I mean they have a favorable everything going for them, but crazy. That's why we play the games because crazy things happen in college
Yeah,
football.
absolutely right there. And of course, we do know that Kirby Smart's going to hype them up. He's a master manipulator of their minds.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, great.
he'll find some chip to put on their shoulder. Oh, so and
Yeah,
so said you guys.
yeah, yeah. There was a clip running around I saw this week, where after Georgia won the title, one of their players, this past season, one of the players was like, "Y'all said we're going to go 5-7, 6-6." It's like
yeah,
nobody said that. They
yeah,
may have
but
said
it's
you might have fallen off and not win a title, but nobody said you're going to have a
yeah,
500 season.
yeah.
So,
I heard that all a couple times in the summer.
uh huh,
Oh, and so Kirby sold him on that, and obviously that worked.
yeah. So he's good at that.
Yeah,
But
he's
moving on
very.
from the Dogs, their rival in the East, Tennessee. Tennessee was maybe on their way to challenging them before
Mhm,
Hendon Hooker got hurt last year. He was Heisman favorite before he went down.
mhm.
Um, was
I
that
mean, he got hurt.
before the
Got
Georgia
hurt
game?
after.
It was after
No,
the
he got
Georgia
hurt.
game.
After. They just got shut down. Georgia just
Yeah.
manhandled them.
Um,
It was a tough. That was one of those games where you kind of knew what was going to happen because they got all that hype after the Alabama game.
mm,
They got moved up to number one, and they were going into Athens, and you could see the writing on the wall in that game, just where Georgia was at that point, and just the newness of it all for Tennessee. I mean, and yeah, I mean, you could tell the writing was on the wall. They just shut them down completely. Really, the only game. To Georgia's credit, I mean, really the only game where Tennessee's offense just looked bad
yeah.
all season, and they took it to them all game there. That was a game where the Tennessee fans got Stetson's phone number and called him all the night before, and then he blew him up.
A classic. Um,
Class.
but yeah, so I think my big notes, two questions for them. Can they keep that momentum from last season? Can they build on that? And then can Joe Milton be consistent?
Yeah.
That's been his kind of Achilles heel at Michigan,
Hmm.
and then in limited time with
Yeah.
Tennessee. We
But he
know he's
got
got.
pulled.
Mm-hmm, we know he's got all the talent in the world. That has got a gun on him, a
Cannon.
cannon for an arm. Um, but it's hard, Hendon Hooker's numbers when he went down last year, 3,100 yards on 70% completion percentage and 27 touchdowns to just two picks.
Exactly.
And that,
And
that Josh
honestly,
Heupel, yeah, go ahead.
I was saying if even with that Georgia loss, if Hendon Hooker had stayed because he got hurt in that South Carolina game, if they win that game and they only have that one loss to
Mhm.
Georgia, very well could have been in the playoff. It would have been hard to keep them out, considering at the end of the season how badly Michigan took it to Ohio State. It would have been hard to keep Tennessee out of the playoff, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think they would have absolutely been that four seed, that fourth
Yeah,
team in. I don't think there's any way you could have kept them out.
exactly.
Uh, uh, but yeah, let's looking at their schedule. Kind of pretty favorable for the most part, I think. Start the year with a Virginia game in Nashville. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Austin P at Florida, kind of a down team. The Swamp is always tough. They've actually lost 9 straight games in the Swamp.
Yeah.
Um, and they haven't won back to back games in the Florida rivalry since 03-04. That's kind of a crazy stat. But and then after that they get UTSA at home, South Carolina at home in a revenge game, a bye, Texas A&M at home, and then it does get a little tricky down the stretch, I guess. A couple sneaky games. You got at Bama. That's not sneaky, but third Saturday in October in Tuscaloosa, and Alabama's going to be out for blood.
Yeah.
And then the next week after that, you have to go at Kentucky. As we
Yeah.
mentioned, if that
That's
Kentucky team is gelled and
that, and
rolling by then.
that's a big. I mean, that's
Hmm.
no matter how that Tennessee game goes, that's gonna be big because either
Hmm.
you're coming off a huge win or you're coming off a tough loss against
Hmm.
your arch rival, and then you're going to Lexington. Yeah, and
Hmm.
depending on how the cat season goes, yeah, that's one. That's the one on Tennessee schedule. Yeah, wow.
And Tennessee, or excuse me, and Kentucky is coming off a bye too, so they're going to be rested.
Ready to
And
go.
then they get UConn at home. Okay, win easy. Then they go at Missouri, which
You
Missouri's
never,
you never
Missouri.
we saw what they almost upset Georgia last year. So that's just Columbia's kind of a weird place.
Yeah.
Then they get Georgia at home, and then Vandy to at home to end the year.
Mhm. So the,
Which Vandy's improving. It probably shouldn't be a threat to this
no.
Kentucky or Tennessee team, but again, after a Georgia game, an emotional
Yeah.
roller coaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of already spelled it out. Josh Heupel seems to be, obviously have them going in the right direction.
Right
Was a
direct.
hell of an offense last year. They do lose, Cedric Tillman and Jalen
Receivers.
Hyatt.
Yeah. But
Um,
they still have a lot of talent there. I
hmm
mean, Brew
Yeah.
McCoy transfer, well, not transfer, but basically kicked out of USC, but
Yeah.
eventually freed up to play there at Tennessee. We know he's a talented guy. But really, it's just going to come down to Joe Milton being not overthrowing people, being efficient. I mean, we
Hmm.
saw glimpses of greatness. I mean, he lit up Clemson in that Orange
Hmm.
Bowl. If he's anything like that Clemson game on a consistent basis, with how explosive that offense has the potential to be, I mean, they could be a heck of a team. But
Yeah,
it's just,
absolutely.
can he do that on a consistent basis? That's a big thing. So
Yeah. They are a legit threat to
they
Tennessee
are.
in that East.
Yeah, yeah, they are definitely a threat to Georgia. But it's just a matter of, see, it's one thing when no one's thinking about you, but it's another thing when people are hyping you up. Can you
Hmm.
live up to that hype? And that, of course, separates the contenders from the pretenders. Is Tennessee going to move up to that contender line? We'll wait and see. But you have to live up to that hype. This is the first year in quite some time that there's a lot of hype outside of the program. So we'll see how they live up to that.
We will see indeed. And another, I guess, the fourth contender that could win SEC title this year, LSU, defending West champions, even with 4 losses last year. I guess one of them was in the title game. Um, yeah, they lost that crazy Florida State game to begin the year, and we all kind of laughed and said, "Oh, this is what you get for hiring Brian Kelly."
Uh-huh.
Then he kind of, got him looking decent. A tough comeback win at Auburn, and then just got blown out by Tennessee. And it was like, oh, okay, here we go. And then they came back, won in the swamp, beat Ole Miss, beat the hell out of Ole Miss, and then that big overtime win over Bama. End of the year with that just dumb loss at Texas A&M. When they were even LSU was getting a little bit of playoff talk.
Yeah.
And then, obviously that killed that. And then, Georgia just roughed them up in the title game. But they're a talented team. They always has been. There's so much talent in that state that love, you grow up in there and you want to go play for LSU.
Oh yeah.
Um, and you know, uh, Jaden Daniels back at quarterback, not the greatest passer in the world, but good. 17-3 touchdown interception ratio last year. But when he can add 1,100 yards on the ground, that makes him supremely dangerous.
And
Um,
know that firsthand.
but yeah, we did see that firsthand. Made a lot of huge plays.
Yeah.
On the other side of the ball, Harold Perkins emerged as just an absolute star last year.
Two
Um,
freshmen, the best defensive player in America.
yeah, I mean, and he was the other difference maker in that Alabama game. Uh,
He's electric.
yeah, 8 R line up. Um, But like we said, they did have their ups and downs last year. Blown out by Tennessee, the dumb loss to A&M, blown out by Georgia, the opening loss to Florida State, and then like we mentioned, the comeback at Auburn, the big win over a top 10 at the time Ole Miss team. 63-7 win over Purdue in the Citrus Bowl. Purdue was just out of their element.
No, that's one of those ones. I mean, yes, it's Purdue, but you wondered, like, does LSU care about this game at all? Like, well, what's their motivation to be there right now?
Yeah,
Their season kind of ended blind, too tough, weird. I mean, the weird loss to A&M. Then, they put up a lot of stats, but Georgia housed them still.
yeah.
Um, and then, kind of, definitely an up and down. But they have all the talent in the world. Brian Kelly, that was always the biggest thing is he couldn't win at Notre Dame because they didn't have, just academic wise, wasn't going to get the same talent as other big programs. So he had reached the ceiling. Now he's
Hmm.
at a spot where he can get all the talent he could ever want. So it's just a matter of can he put it all together to get himself a championship.
Yep.
And
Um, Schedule wise, we mentioned that they have a return game against Florida State, which quote unquote neutral site, but it's in Orlando, so like
should be
last
pro.
year in New Orleans was a neutral site. Florida State fans will show. LSU fans do travel well, but that'll be mostly Florida State fans.
Right.
They get Grambling, and then at State, home for
Mhm.
Arkansas, at Ole Miss in Missouri, home for Auburn, home for Army, a bye before at Alabama, and then in the year at home with Florida, Georgia State, and A&M. So, some tricky road games there. One real tough one in Alabama, and I guess technically Florida State doesn't count as a true away game, but
Right, but I mean, still
um, yeah, a team that's getting their own title talk. That's going to be a heavyweight clash to open the
a
season.
heavyweight. Yeah.
Um, Georgia's not on schedule again, so that's good for
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yep.
Tennessee's not on the schedule this year. Like we mentioned, they
No,
got
that's a good
blown out
thing.
by them last year.
Yeah. I
They
mean,
replace, they get Florida from the east as always, and then Missouri.
yeah.
Like we said,
But I mean,
and Columbia is tricky.
yeah, Columbia is tricky. But honestly, I mean, if you look at that schedule, outside of possibly, I mean, and of course we play the games, but after Florida State, there's not a game that they shouldn't win. I mean, they very well could go to that Alabama game undefeated. It wouldn't
Absolutely.
shock me if they're undefeated going into the Bama game at all.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, Florida State, yes, that should be a heck of a game, and it could go either way. Who knows with that one?
Hmm.
And if it lives up to anything in last year's game, it will be a fun one to watch, especially from an outsider view.
Hmm.
It's always cool to be able to watch those games where you don't really have a. I mean, it's one of the ones that either team loses, I'm good with it. But you of course being a Bama fan, you like to see LSU lose, but I mean, it doesn't make or break anything. So
Hmm.
that'd be a fun one to watch. I mean, Grambling, of course, that's a win. Mississippi State, I mean, just to change, we'll see how that all plays out with, of course, the new coach.
Hmm.
Uh, Arkansas, I mean, it's at home there, so big rivalry game is so weird that that's not the Thanksgiving game anymore still. But
Yeah.
but I mean, Arkansas will be talented, but in Baton Rouge, I don't know. That Ole Miss game, it is at Ole Miss, and it's just about what Ole Miss, um, rivalry game, but
Hmm.
so one is LSU's dominated that series throughout history. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But at Mizzou, yeah, like I said, Columbia, weird spot. Then Auburn, Auburn, it's just a matter of we don't know what Auburn's going to be at all. We do know that they we know that they have potential. They've on the right path, but it's just a matter: are they going to be there this year, or we're still a year or two away from, you freeze getting all those people in there, and
Hmm.
of
Well, that's
course Army, but
yeah.
yeah, but,
Well, that's kind of a good transition into it. I think it's pretty safe bet to say that the SEC champs coming from one of those four teams we just talked
oh
about.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and then we know that okay, it's not going to be Vandy, not going to be Mississippi State.
Hmm.
Um, like you mentioned, the unfortunate loss of Mike Leach,
Yeah.
transition year for the Bulldogs.
Hmm.
Probably not going to be. Missouri's going to might be
There might be a
maybe
tough out.
maybe pointing up, and they'll be a tough out, but probably won't do too much damage. And then Auburn, like you just mentioned,
You just don't
probably
know.
a couple years away because it seems like they didn't recruit at all under Brian Harsin for 2 years, and that's that's
Yeah,
that's huge in
yeah,
SEC terms. And we don't know Hugh Freeze too. We'll get to them, but the next group, we have been doing surprise teams or whatever teams that could sneak up and maybe win a title. I don't know if there's any of those there, but what everybody else to me is a wild card.
yeah,
It is such just a wild card year, and
right.
I will say going back, one thing we in those four teams, with the exception of LSU and Jaden Daniels, the
Hmm.
quarterback's kind of like up in the air. Joe
No,
Milton
yeah,
is at least experienced and has the talent, but he's just he's got to answer. Can he do it for a full season? And then we talked about the
exactly.
situations at Georgia and Bama. This
Right.
pack of teams, though, led by Arkansas, KJ Jefferson.
Yeah.
Um, you look at South
Mm,
Carolina with Spencer Rattler. And Kentucky's got
exactly.
Devin O'Leary transferring in from NC State.
Exactly.
These are some good quarterbacks in this
It
little
is.
section of the conference
Yeah.
that could, these teams could absolutely sneak up and ruin someone's
Oh yeah.
title aspirations.
For
And you
sure.
got a team like Texas A&M, who just the perennial. We mentioned in Pac-12 last week, UCLA may be the most underachieving program in the country.
Mhm.
Historically, Texas A&M could battle them for that title,
For sure.
particularly
Because
during the Jimbo Fisher era.
yeah, because all the greatest recruiting class ever, you know,
Hmm.
didn't live up to the hype at all.
And so many of them gone now already.
On there, but there's still a very talented team,
Hmm.
and a lot of talent there. Of course, the biggest thing is just if they can coexist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we all know the offensive coordinator there, Bobby Petrino. If Jimbo and Bobby can coexist, watch out.
Yeah, and
Big if.
that's the big thing, is it, right? Like will they coexist? You've mentioned it before, but Jimbo has said multiple times, like I'm going to stay back, and then the next week been like, well, like so is his ego going to get in the way of letting Petrino call the plays and run the offense, or are they going to butt heads? Is this going to be a weird thing where 3 weeks into the season Petrino's already gone, or is it going to work out like it could? That's a lot of football knowledge on there, but has
On
maybe
knowledge.
the game
But yeah,
passed them by? Can Jimbo Fisher adjust enough? Another interesting thing there, as far as their whole season performance, they've given Alabama hell the past couple of years. Obviously beat them 2 years ago. Um,
give
took them to the last play last year, but if you listen to people talking, Jimbo Fisher like basically spent every week game planning for Alabama, built his season around the Alabama game, and it obviously means so much to him to beat Saban and all that and their little rivalry. Do his players care that much? Do the fans? They obviously want to beat Alabama, but I think they want to see obviously a winning team. You can't go 5-7 with that much talent. Um,
It's
During
not.
a few years ago, during the COVID year, Alabama housed them, but then they didn't lose another game at all that year.
Right. Went to the Super Bowl, got to win over North Carolina.
Right,
When they were that fifth team, it was came down to them or Notre Dame making the playoff, and they
right,
liked it when Notre Dame's win over Clemson. There, is that?
yeah,
Yeah, I think that was the difference maker. But yeah,
yeah, and so you just gotta like if A&M is like we mentioned the perennial, like if they just get their act together team, then they are
yeah.
absolutely a threat to win the conference, go to the playoff.
I mean, they can be as good as they want to be, but do
Hmm.
they? Are they going to get to that level? I mean, they have a heck of a quarterback. I mean, Connor Wegman. We saw bits and pieces of. I mean, he has a lot of talent. He could
Hmm.
be a. I mean, he could be a Heisman hopeful by the end of his time in Texas A&M if things go right. I mean, he has that much talent. There's
Hmm.
still a lot of talent in A&M. A lot of those guys have left, but a lot of them are still there.
Yeah,
Jimbo
they get.
recruits well.
Yeah, he does recruit well. They lose their leading rusher from last year. Was it
Hmm.
Devon Devin a chain?
Oh, yeah.
But they get back so much in the receiving game. They got Aeneas
Hmm.
Smith, who's just one of the fastest players in football.
Right.
Dangerous return man. Schedules, they get a lot of their good games at home, but it's kind of a tough road schedule too.
Uh,
They're four road games this year at Miami, who
who
we talked
knows?
about them. Another team, like if they put it together, maybe they could. It was an ugly game last year, but Miami had a
Yeah.
chance to win.
Yeah. But their road games are pretty tough. Yeah. I mean,
Hmm. At
at
Miami,
Miami, who knows?
at
At Tennessee,
Tennessee. Whew.
at Ole Miss, and
Hmm.
then at LSU at the end of the year.
Yeah,
Yikes.
those are all just tough road
No
games.
favors done there.
In that Tennessee game in particular, they got to go at Tennessee the week after playing Alabama, and Tennessee's on a bye. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's we talked about
Know how much?
those
Yeah,
next
as you
week
said.
games, as you call them in the
Yeah.
SEC, where you're just even if you win, you're beat
Yeah.
up, you're
Yeah.
exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically, and then
Exactly.
hey,
Mhm.
you got to turn. You just lost to
Either
Alabama. You
beat
just
Bama, either
beat
beat
Alabama,
Bama,
whatever. Yeah. Well,
and
here's
then
your
you're
reward for
facing
that
the
is going to Neyland Stadium in
Tennessee.
a rejuvenated
Yeah,
Tennessee program.
exactly.
Um,
And the most interesting thing to me on that is talking about the Alabama game. I mean, I mean, you could see a loss. I mean, they could slip up at Auburn, maybe Arkansas, but at the same time, it very well could go undefeated going into that
mhm.
Alabama game.
Yeah, their other games are New Mexico and Louisiana Monroe, so those should be
Yeah.
easy wins. Lost to App State last year.
Hmm.
So is this, if and that's another thing too. If say they lose that week 2 game to Miami, ooh, I think
Yeah.
that fan base is going to turn. I
Oh,
think
quick.
you're going to get some questions like, has this
Yeah.
team already quit on Jimbo type stuff? If they struggle offensively against
Yeah.
New Mexico or Miami,
Yeah. They run
like,
flat. Yeah.
yeah, if they look flat, that's going to be, yeah. So there's a
Because at no
lot.
point last year did the offense really look good. Even like in the UMass game, I think to start the year, it was like,
No,
what?
that was the end of the year. They started the year with Sam Houston State won
Was
31
it Sam?
nothing, but it wasn't overly impressive.
It
And if I
wasn't
remember
pretty.
right,
Yeah.
they were only up like 10-0 in the second half at one point, and they
Yeah.
scored a few late
Yeah.
touchdowns.
Okay. So,
UMass
okay.
game was, after they had lost what 6 in a row at that point. They
Yeah.
finally broke that and won 20-3, and then upset LSU the next week.
So weird. And
It's
they looked
just
so good in that LSU game. It was
mhm,
so good.
so good, and it's also weird because it could have been an even worse season last year. We talked about the
Yeah.
Miami game. Miami had their chances to win that game.
Yeah. That was a
And then the
It's one
next
of those
week
games.
versus Arkansas, remember, was that weird play
Yeah.
where Jefferson lost it at the line and it basically turned the game. It was about to be what I think 14-0 Arkansas, and instead A&M returned a fumble, tied it, and really flipped the momentum of the game.
Yeah.
Um,
'Cause, yeah. That
yeah,
changed everything. So
yeah, it
you
was.
there's so that it could have been much better and it could have been much worse. But that's
Hmm.
a lot of ways how the SEC goes. The play here,
Hmm.
play there. The difference between 10-2 and 8-4 worse. It just
Yeah, I
that's
mean
why.
they could have been a 3-9 team had a couple of things
Yeah.
swung the other way last year.
But they could have
Granted, they
also
also
been
could have beat Alabama. So
yeah, they could beat Alabama. They could have beat
Ole
you
Miss,
know
Could have
Yeah.
beat Auburn.
It's a
Um,
lot of coulda, woulda, shoulda for the A&M. But
yeah.
at this point, with how much Jimbo gets paid, with how much hype that there is and has been for the last couple of years, I mean, this is, I think, a make or break season for the Aggies. They
Hmm.
can't have anything like last year. You know, they can lose some games, but it has to be competitive. You lose Alabama, understandable.
Hmm.
But I mean, you gotta beat the Auburn team while they're still down a little bit.
Uh-huh.
You know, I think you have to. I think you have to win that Miami game. It's at Miami, but that's the one you have to win.
Hmm.
When you get Auburn and Arkansas at home, the Arkansas, excuse me, is that neutral site still. But I mean,
Hmm.
I think you have to win both those games just for the confidence sake.
Yeah. I mean, you
But
almost have to go into the Alabama game unbeaten.
yeah,
But yeah, and that's a tough stretch. You can't let that spiral. If you lose to
yeah,
Alabama, you can't let that,
yeah. Because I mean,
because
yeah,
then the
because that
next
next
week,
three
yeah.
weeks.
Hmm.
You got Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's not.
And be a good one. That last team you mentioned, let's move to them. Another just wild card team this year with
Yeah.
another lane train. You never know. Uh, Jackson Dart back at quarterback, but they got Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma
Man, they
State right
have
behind them.
they have
They
a
got
plethora of quarterbacks.
yeah. Oh, they got Walker Howard. It's just he was an LSU transfer. They just Lane's got if one of them doesn't work, he's going to probably switch to another one.
Yeah,
They have great running game.
arguably the
Uh,
best running back in college football.
yeah, Quinshawn Judkins. They did lose Malik Heath and Jonathan Mingo from the receiving core, but they
Hmm.
they still have some pretty good receivers there.
Yeah,
Um, got 16 returning starters, 9 on offense, 7 on defense. So um, I think you're going to see them run more this year. Um,
hmm
that's always been one of Lane Kiffin's strengths as a play caller and coordinator is he feeds his playmakers. It doesn't matter if they're
they got.
receivers, quarterbacks, running backs, tight
Yeah.
ends. He's going to get in the ball.
Oh yeah.
Their trip up this year is their schedule. Ooh man, Ole
It's
Miss.
tough. It is.
You get Mercer to begin the year. So hopefully you look good, iron out any kinks you have because it gets hard starting the next week. You go at Tulane.
Yeah.
That's normally not something you say is a hard game for an SEC team, but
But
Tulane is
this is
yeah.
this is a Tulane team that's we know coming off the big win last year, beat the Trojans in the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Had a heck of a season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was their one? They lost what? Yeah, I mean, just a heck of a year for them. So that's going to be a big game at Tulane too. Um, so that'll be a Ole Miss better be ready to go
Yeah.
early.
I believe it's actually going to be in Tulane's stadium too, not the
Stadium.
Superdome
Not
where
to,
they could
that'll
lack
be
some people, but it's going to be packed out in their own campus stadium
yeah.
up there,
It's not
uptown
that
New
big of a
Orleans.
stadium, but it's
Yeah,
going to be rowdy.
real rowdy.
National TV too, ESPN two. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it'll be
And
a
then
fun one.
they get sort of a break next year after that in Georgia Tech at home, but Georgia Tech's a little feisty. They improved as the year went on last year. Um,
Yeah,
Probably not talented. Talent wise, I mean, Ole Miss beat the hell out of them last year. They should do the same this year.
yeah,
But
should.
then at Alabama, and after that, LSU comes calling to Oxford, and then Arkansas comes to Oxford, and then they get a bye, and then they have to go at Auburn, and that game is
Yeah,
always that Ole Miss Auburn game is always a
crazy
mess.
game.
And then
Yeah.
they get Vandy, and then A&M at home, then at Georgia, UL Monroe, and then the Egg Bowl in Starkville.
Yes,
Just a brutal schedule.
that is a brutal schedule.
Those road games are just unfair.
Yeah,
But
because it's not
we
very often
Mhm.
that a SEC team not only plays a tough non-power five, but on the road, and that's crazy in itself.
Yeah, and maybe when they schedule it, that you didn't think it would be, but And then of course there's what hurt them, like they lost last three and four of their last five
It
regular season
fell,
games last year.
fell apart badly
Yeah, it fell
for
apart.
them.
Had that Lane Kiffin to Auburn rumors and all that probably derailed a lot. So hopefully that's solidified for them this year, unless
Hmm.
some other rumor pops up for him. And they can get back for them. That 21 team, the 10-3.
Hmm.
Was
What would they start off last year with 7-0, and then it kind of fell apart.
yeah, they start 7-0. They were number 7 going into that LSU game, and it was
Mm-hmm.
close early, and LSU just blew them out in the second half.
Half they just
Um,
stomped them.
then they
That was
went to A&M and squeaked out a win there, and then it just fell apart in the
mhm.
last 3 games. Lost to Alabama, lost at Arkansas, and lost in
tough.
the Egg Bowl.
Tough Alabama loss.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the Egg Bowl. I mean, and then a tough bowl loss.
Yeah,
Got house
Texas
by
Tech blew them out. Yeah.
4 straight losses. Yeah, 5 of the last 6. Yeah, that was a tough way to end the season after it started not quite impressive start. But yeah,
Yeah. And then
excuse me.
one of their rivals, Arkansas, like we mentioned, maybe the best returning quarterback in the SEC.
Very well could be.
KJ Jefferson, another guy, a big guy, who can do it with his legs as well. Um,
Mhm.
Disappointing year last year for the Hogs. They had some momentum coming into the season and
Yeah.
didn't quite win their big games. We mentioned a tough loss to A&M. That probably
Mhm.
derailed them some. Then they got Alabama. Bryce Young gets hurt, and then Milrow comes in and runs all over them. Him and our boy Jameer Gibbs just break off home runs. Like, was it
Yeah,
3 runs over 75 yards?
that it was. Mhm.
Um, and and then they lost at State the next week. So they went from 3-0 with some hype to in the top 10 ranking to 3 losses and out of the top 25 altogether. They lost to Liberty.
Yeah.
Tough loss to LSU. They could have beat them and didn't.
They had injuries too, though. I mean, KJ was
Yeah.
out
Hmm.
there, and that really changed it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of games that they could. I mean, Liberty should have won it.
Hmm.
LSU, I mean, they gave LSU. It was that weird snowy morning game. I mean, they gave LSU all they wanted there.
Hmm.
I mean, that was a bad loss to. I mean, tough loss to Mizzou at the end of the year, and the
Yeah.
one you didn't want to see there.
Yeah.
But I mean, and the weird one though was Mississippi State just housed
Yeah.
them.
Oh yeah, Will Rogers threw all over them. But yeah, we talked about beside the State and the Alabama game, they lost to A&M by 2 points. They lost to Liberty by 2 points. They lost to LSU by 3 points. They lost to Missouri by 2 points. So yeah, they
I
were a few
mean,
plays away
one or
from
two plays being
being
ten
a
and
much
two.
better team.
Yeah,
Um,
easily could have been 10-2 last year for sure.
yeah. Schedule wise this year, 3 straight home games to begin the year: Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU, at LSU. Then, so that'd be an early tough one, and and that starts a
So
brutal
weird
stretch
to see
for
that.
them. Uh, a brutal stretch. It begins September 23rd at LSU, then A&M the next week, at Ole Miss, at
Ooh.
Alabama, and then you get after Alabama State in Fayetteville, but State is coming off a bye, and LSU is coming off of that gauntlet, or excuse me, Arkansas is coming off of that gauntlet. So
Yeah. So who knows?
that's rough. And then they get a bye themselves in the year at Florida, and then home for Auburn, FIU, and Missouri.
Hmm.
Another tough schedule for them, but a team that you know you wouldn't be shocked to see them pull an upset.
Yeah.
It
Because I
wouldn't be too
mean,
shocked.
yeah. I mean, there's. I mean, they have. Yeah, like you said, one of the best returning quarterbacks in the SEC. If he stays healthy, I mean, sky's the limit for KJ. I mean, just
Yeah.
he's that dynamic passer. We know how good he is with the legs, and then they have one of the best. I mean, honestly, I mean, but how to think that Ole Miss and Arkansas have the two best running backs in the college football, because
Mm-hmm.
Rocket Sanders is a highlight reel in himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're going to be in some games. It's just a matter of can they finish teams off this year? Seemed to be their downfall last year.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, you, I mean, you could see them anywhere, from a 6-6 type year
Mm-hmm.
to anywhere to like 10-2. So I mean, it's all over the place for Arkansas.
Hmm.
I mean, really, I honestly outside of I'm gonna say Alabama and LSU, there's not a game where I'm not where I can don't say that they don't have a chance or could win that game.
Yeah,
Tough games, but nothing they couldn't win.
yeah.
So who knows?
Moving on to wild card teams in the East, we'll start with last year's November national champs, the South
Mm,
Carolina Gamecocks.
yeah,
Are having an all right season last
yeah,
year, and then they all of a sudden just house Tennessee, and then
yeah,
upset Clemson in Clemson.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
they were, yeah. I mean, their team was all over the place. I mean,
mhm.
their offense was pretty bad up until that Tennessee game.
Yeah,
Honestly, I mean, they lost to Florida, who had
38 to
lost.
6 the week before
Yeah, they
Tennessee.
got
Yeah,
out. Team that had lost to and Florida lost to Vanderbilt before that. So I mean, just a weird loss there. I mean, they had the big hype game at the start of the year. With Georgia got housed there at
hmm,
home. And the thing with Spencer Rattler, he seemed to never really get clicking until that Tennessee game.
hmm,
And it's just a matter of if they can consistently look like they did that game in the second half of that Clemson game, this South Carolina team could be very dangerous. At the same time, can they do that on for 12 weeks?
yeah.
I
And
mean,
they have they open with some tough schedule. They get North
yeah,
Carolina and a neutral site in
tough,
Charlotte to
a
begin the
tough game.
year. Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. It'll be a fun game to watch.
Yeah,
They get Furman next week at home, and then it's at Georgia, State at home, at Tennessee.
yeah, that's
So
tough
they're
September.
that's a rough SEC opening three.
Yeah, I mean,
Before,
you could. I
Mhm.
mean, they could very well be 2-3 at the end of September.
Yeah, I mean they could be a 1-4. They could lose to State. They shouldn't, but they could.
Yeah,
Um,
they could also be 4-1.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, who knows? They could, upset either Georgia or Tennessee. Hell,
Yeah,
maybe they do both. Not likely, but you never know.
I
After
mean,
their bye, they get. Oh, go
I
ahead.
guess if you're a South Carolina fan, worst case scenario, you hope to be 3-2. You
Yeah,
hope that if you do lose, you have a good showing against Georgia, have a good showing against Tennessee. Maybe you don't win those games, but it sets you up for the rest of the season because you're right there,
yeah,
and the
but you're in
fan
them
base.
in the fourth quarter. Maybe you have a lead
Yeah,
at one point, or maybe you just
yeah,
look like we were never outmatched in that game. We just
yeah,
lost to a
just
better team.
yeah,
Um, and then you go Florida at home, at Missouri, at A&M, Jacksonville State, Vandy, Kentucky, and Clemson all at home the end of the year. So we talked about Kentucky being improved toward the end of the year, and Clemson is going to be Clemson, but having both those games at the end of the year in Columbia, uh,
that would
uh,
be.
yeah. Um, so yeah, and
You know,
it's like you said,
but
if
the thing
Spencer
with
Rattler plays for 12 weeks, like he played in those Tennessee and Clemson games, they could do some damage, and
right,
looks like Shane Beamer's a pretty good head coach.
seems to be. I
Yeah,
mean, great. I mean, he has great energy. Uh, Recruits well. It's a matter of can they put it all together. Um,
yeah.
the tough September, but if they come out of September, I
Hmm.
mean, the rest of the schedule until November, I mean, is pretty manageable. Until the so I mean, even if they do have a tougher September, I mean, Florida at home. I mean, we don't know what Florida will be,
Hmm.
but I mean, one that you would think South Carolina probably should win. It'd be a revenge game for them anyway.
Hmm.
At Mizzou, who knows? At A&M, who knows? But I
Hmm.
mean, definitely not games that you say they're out of it.
Hmm.
Jacksonville State should win. Vandy should win. And the last two wild cards, but games that they could win, either one at home in Columbia. And depending how their season has gone to that point, could be really big games. Whether it be still in contention for the SEC East at the time of the Kentucky game, depending on how the season's gone to that point. And of course, the end of the season, there even if they're out of SEC East race. Who knows? Still very much alive for a New Year's Six game. If they at that point going into that game at what 9-2. Let's say the only losses are Georgia and Tennessee. 9-2 against Clemson. They win that game. They're very well New Year's Six type team. So very. So who knows? But if they play with how they did at the end of the year, watch out. But
Hmm.
it's a lot of what ifs in South Carolina. And
Yeah.
a lot of excitement, at least back in the program. They're pretty loyal fan base there. They show out even when they've had some down times. But they seem to have made the right hire here and seem to be going in the right direction at least.
Yeah. We'll stay in the East. Another wild card team could go either way. Kentucky. We
Yeah.
mentioned Devin Leary transferring in from NC State. They get offensive coordinator
Hmm.
Liam Cohen back. He left. He was there before left last season to go to the NFL, and then he's back
Hmm.
again. And you wonder if maybe that's a reason that they kind of dipped on offense last year. Will Levis didn't have as good a year as he had in 21.
Right.
They didn't look as strong running the
Hmm.
ball. Had some
No,
injuries. But
that offensive line was terrible last year.
yeah, that's
That's
absolutely the
wrong.
number one thing. That offensive line has to play better this year. They
That
get.
was a strength for Kentucky for a while. I mean that,
Hmm.
and they really fell off hard last year with that offensive line, and um, he gets hurt. Will Levis got hurt in that Ole Miss game, and that kind of threw him off for the rest of the year. It seemed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're definitely going to have consistent offensive line play, be
Hmm.
able to run the ball, and honestly keep Leary healthy because we know how good he can be, but he has had some health issues when at NC State,
Hmm.
and I think he's gonna have to be there the entire year, and kind of he's another guy who his injuries limited him last year. But at 21 season, when he had 30 touchdowns, five interceptions, I mean, there was a lot of hype going in for NC State going into last year with what they could have been.
Hmm.
So we'll see if he can get back to that 21 momentum in Lexington.
Yeah.
But if
They
they,
But no, we mentioned they have to. That line has to improve. They get
yeah,
They do lose Chris Rodriguez, a tailback, but they got a couple of
talent.
good transfers. A Vandy transfer, Ray Davis. They also got NC State running back transfer in Demi
Yeah.
Sumo Kambaye. I'm sorry for that pronunciation, but so if they can fill in, they get a lot of their receiving leaders back. Like we said, they get their offensive coordinator back from when they were really good on offense.
Mhm.
And we all know Mark Stoops is a really good coach.
He
Um,
is.
that said, schedule September is fine. Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, at Vandy, Florida. Okay, you could easily see them being 5-0 after that schedule. At worst, 4-1 at worst. Then, oh boy, at Georgia, Missouri, Tennessee, at State, Alabama, at South Carolina, at Louisville.
Whew.
Yeah, November in
That's,
particular, 3 road games out of 4. That last stretch after their bye, adding Tennessee to that. You have to go at Georgia. You have to end the year at South Carolina and at your rival Louisville. Um,
mm,
yeah, it is a brutal, brutal stretch.
brutal.
They do have a winning streak against the Cats there. They've won 3 straight times in Louisville itself, and I think they've won past. I'm not sure, at least 4 times. I know that. Maybe 5, but yeah, that's just a tough schedule. They're a talented team. Um, we know they're coached right. They they play hard. That's a tough schedule. But like you said, if they stay healthy, and that line
Oh,
improves.
yeah, they could be.
Mhm.
They're going to give team. They could have a possibility. Yeah, I don't think they're not going to win the East. I
Mm.
don't. I don't see that happening. But I mean, they could. If they're 10-2 at the end of the year, it wouldn't shock me.
No,
But they're
not at all.
another team
Yeah.
that could also be where they're kind of at the end of the year hoping to get into a bowl
Hmm.
picture. the ending at 7-5 or 6-6. I mean, just kind of with how that schedule is, and just how football goes with injuries, how that offensive line gels,
Hmm.
just what they. So they're a team that, so yeah, very much a wild card because you just don't know. Main thing for them though is they have, just for where they want to be. I think they really have to go into that Georgia game undefeated.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt is a tougher game just because Vanderbilt, I think, has a good coach, and they're headed in the right direction. But
Hmm.
Kentucky has to win that game. They have a 2-year win streak over Florida, and we don't know about Florida, but it's a home game, and they got to win that one. I think if they at least go into that Georgia game undefeated, they're at least in the right direction of where you want your team to be at that point of the year.
Hmm.
They can stay healthy and go into that Georgia game undefeated. It's going to be a good year for the Cats, I think. But
Yeah. Next two teams I'll talk about are also wild cards, but more in the sense of you just have no fucking idea how their season's going to go, and that's Auburn and Florida.
Mhm.
Um, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the Gators.
The Gators. Yeah, go ahead.
And,
Speak on
second year coach,
them.
Billy Napier. You know, and Florida just hasn't been Florida for a while now.
Mm-mm.
Since pretty much, yeah, it's just Florida just hasn't been Florida since Urban left.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's been up and down. They thought they found a guy with Dan Mullen and started off hot and just fell apart quick.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Napier's in a tough situation because there's a lot of prestige in Florida, a lot of expectations. Some are little, more, fan base has like a lot of expectations, and not necessarily basing upon current status. They're living off the past. I mean, all great programs have gone through that at some one point or another. But he's a younger coach, has a lot of energy. Just a matter of putting it all together. I don't think there's a lot of expectation for Florida this year. But I mean, I think they're excited because recently he's been recruiting out. He's been knocking out the park recently. Some big defensive players coming in,
Mm-hmm.
so I think he's had them in the right direction. But this season, who knows? I mean, they get Graham Mertz at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a guy who started off hot at Wisconsin, but by the end of his time in Madison, they didn't want him there anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, he's had some good things, but at some point, at the same time, you're like, oh,
Yeah, but they got a home run hitter and Trevor Etienne at running
oh yeah,
back.
heck of a running back.
Uh huh.
Maybe as far as like just the running back room, it's a solid running back room
Yeah,
there
him,
at
Montrell Johnson.
yeah,
Yeah, that's they got some talent. Receiving the ball. Talented defense.
yeah,
They do need to improve. And their team also kind of schedules a little rough on them. They start the year out on a
yeah,
Thursday at Utah, in a game that they almost lost last year against a Utah team that will be hyped up um,
yeah.
for a
At
big.
Utah,
Hmm.
prime time,
Yeah.
ESPN Thursday night. I mean, that's a big game.
Hmm.
And then, but the thing with that game, you don't know the quarterback for Utah. Is he going to be healthy enough to play? Just tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl. So I mean, it hasn't even been a full year.
Hmm.
Uh, people are saying he's throwing and stuff, but you never know to the first game for real if he's going to play. Uh, going into Utah, it's going to be tough. Who knows?
The road schedule
I
is brutal. It's
Yeah, it is.
Utah, and then they get McNeese, Tennessee, and Charlotte all at home. Obviously, the Tennessee game they'll probably lose.
Yeah,
But yeah, hell, they only lost by 5 last year in
yeah.
um,
In
Knoxville, and they
Knoxville.
beat them the year before. So
I mean, we know that they've had quite the run over Tennessee.
yeah,
And what was this? Was it six? It was a long run before last year. I think it was like 15 or 16.
yeah, it
Uh,
was a pretty long one. They had won 5 straight and then 16 of 17.
in the
until
seven.
before last year's loss.
Okay. I know it's been quite a run there. So who knows with that game?
Hmm.
Tennessee kind of got the monkey off their back last year. So we'll just see. I mean, it's a rivalry game. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think they win that one.
No, but
Uh,
their road schedules at Kentucky, at Utah, we
yeah.
mentioned that, at Kentucky, at South Carolina, at LSU, and at Missouri. And that Missouri game is the week after they travel to LSU, and the week before Florida State comes to Gainesville.
That's a top game in itself.
Yeah, that is a trap game right there.
Yeah. And
Um,
it means this is a team, like I said, we have no idea.
yeah, that's like I said before. They're the wild card in the sense that maybe we don't think they'll necessarily upset a Georgia or a Tennessee, probably,
No.
but we also have no idea. Billy
Yeah.
Napier could be a good coach. We saw what he did at Louisiana, or he could be in
Yeah.
over his head. Graham Mertz could benefit from a change of scenery, or he could get even worse. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, they could start their year with a big win at Utah, or they could go and get blown out. Uh,
Yeah.
just
So,
who knows?
yeah. I guess the most favorable thing, if they can somehow either win the Utah or Tennessee game and come into that Kentucky game at 3-1, that I think that things are looking up
Hmm.
for them at that point.
Yeah.
But they could very well be 2-2. Um, I think this year for the Gators is if they don't win those games, how are they looking in those games? Are they competing? Are
Hmm.
they taking them to the wire? Or are they getting housed? Because we saw the Gators all over the place last year. I mean, we saw them get the big win against Utah to start the year. Then the Kentucky game the following week, it wasn't a bad score, but they kind of got dominated. They
Hmm.
got brought back to earth pretty badly. I mean, they showed up against Tennessee. They gave Tennessee a game. Um, but losing to Vanderbilt. Um, they did give Florida State a game last year. I mean, that came down to the last couple plays.
Hmm.
But then the bowl game, they got slaughtered by Oregon State. Of course, at that point, who knew if anybody wanted to be there? But still, not how you want to end the year. But yeah, I don't know. They're kind of very much. I think this year if they're at 7-5, 8-4, I think that's kind of their ceiling. But honestly, the bottom could be bad if
Yeah.
things don't go right. I mean, they could very well be 3-9, 4-18. That's
Yeah.
not going to sit well in Gainesville.
No, that's an absolutely a team that could. That's yeah. They could bottom out. Before, it could get really bad before it gets better in Gainesville. You would hope they'd have the patience with Billy Napier,
Yeah,
but if he has another losing season, or looks bad, then maybe they get restless and try to go elsewhere already. Maybe
but
Lane Kiffin's name gets thrown out.
but I think the main thing with them is they give Billy some time because strangely enough, it's from everything I've heard and from didn't seem like Dan Mullen was a good recruiter at all.
Like he
He
had
didn't
no
recruit.
interest in recruiting.
Yeah, and that's just crazy in the SEC. And
Hmm.
as much time he spent in the SEC, he knew how big recruiting is. That's the craziest thing about it. It's not like he was foreign to the SEC.
Yeah.
He'd been to Florida before. He'd been in Mississippi State, so he knew how important recruiting was. Like I don't get it.
Yeah.
'Cause- yeah, but
Uh,
I'll see for Billy. But yeah, I mean, I think 8-4 is the ceiling. But yeah, hopefully I like Billy. So hopefully it's better than what a lot of people expect this year.
yeah. Our other who the fuck knows team also wears blue and orange, the Auburn Tigers. Hugh
Yeah,
Freeze coming in. We talked about that last fall when they hired him. All the the moral ambiguity of it. We thought that they may have found something really good in Cadillac Williams. He really
right.
turned that attitude and
Brought in a lot of energy that was lacking
yeah,
with
exactly brought in energy that had been missing there for a few seasons, even dating back to the end of the uh, Gus Malzahn era.
Yeah.
Um, they upset A&M. They got beat soundly by Alabama, but ran for damn near 300 yards on them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
They're a team you don't. Yeah. Who knows?
don't
I mean, they have
probably
that
shouldn't have
QB
Brian.
battle.
Yeah, Brian Harson was another one. Did not recruit well there. So their cupboard might
And
be a
he
little bare.
was from the get go. Like,
Yeah,
like that was just a weird hire, and it just got
yeah, it was
way
never
worse.
never a good marriage. Then there's questions around their star back Jarquez Hunter if he's going to be eligible or not.
I, I mean,
Does something
heard he
come out
was.
this week? Yeah,
He's back practicing last week, and we'll see how that
yeah. See if
goes.
that stays for them. They got a quarterback Robbie Ashford who can do it with his legs, but needs to improve a hell of a lot with his arm.
Yeah.
Um,
And they brought Aiden Thorne from Michigan State.
mhm.
So
Which
who
yeah,
knows with that?
um,
Who knows?
yeah.
But I would expect to see both because even if let's say Thorne wins the quarterback spot, Ashford's a guy who is explosive. We know how well he can run the ball, so you would think there's going to have some packages or something for him there, even if
Mhm.
he isn't the starting quarterback.
Yeah, they actually rushed for over 300 against Alabama. Um,
But
but yeah, it's up and down schedule. It's probably tough for a team in their position. They have a weird game at Cal second week of the year, at
Mhm,
A&M, and then Georgia at home the next week, at
mhm.
LSU, at Arkansas, at Vandy. They Iron Bowl at home this year, but we talked about did Alabama erase the Jordan Hare magic? Alabama is probably obviously a much more talented team than them this year, but Hugh Freeze, there'll be a lot of talk about how he's the only active coach to
Oh,
beat Saban back
back
to
to back.
back.
Yeah.
But we'll see. As we talked when his Liberty team had some really bad losses toward the end of the year last year. Um, and
He's he's one of those guys who bring the hype train.
uh
He gets a couple big wins, but he always has some questionable losses at Ole Miss
hmm
and
yeah,
at Liberty. That's
for him
questionable
beating
loss.
Saban in back to back years, and Ole Miss was ranked in the initial college football playoff rankings. They didn't win the SEC West in either of those years. Um,
West.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
Alabama still won the SEC both of those years. So those losses kind of amounted to nothing,
they
or
always
those
go.
wins. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it seemed like they were built to. They kind of base everything on the Alabama game,
hmm
and so that's the main thing. And then of course he's in a spot where he's at Auburn, so that's of course they base everything on Alabama. So it'd be interesting just to see how that goes. For him.
Yeah, for all the hype
But
around Hugh Freeze teams, he's never really won anything big. So
no,
we'll see. Like we said, they still have Cadillac there. He's promoted like associate head coach, but like we said, there's also a lot of Auburn fans that were turned off by the hire of Hugh Freeze. Kind of thought that maybe they kind of sold their soul a little bit for a chance at winning,
but
and we'll
I'm talking
see.
about Auburn
How?
fans.
Yeah,
Come on, guys.
yeah,
Guys, this is nothing new in Auburn.
yeah,
This is nothing new in Auburn, you guys.
yeah, yeah. When your basketball coach is who he is,
Yeah, this is nothing. Come on, guys. Let's
yeah,
be realistic for a moment. But I mean, understandable. But
yeah,
either way, you don't know. You know he has dangerous moments. He's going to recruit well long term. He's a people guy. He's going to go into he knows how to sell the program that he's
hmm
at. And if he can bring anything like he did at Ole Miss as far as recruiting, and now everything that
oh,
he did at Ole Miss is legal. Hey,
yeah. And yeah, and he's already well on his way to
Yeah.
vastly improving recruiting for Auburn. If you look at current rankings and stuff.
Wide
So, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe a good season would probably be getting to a bowl again for them.
Yeah. They get
Uh,
to a ball game, play games competitively. I think
mhm.
that's where I think that's what the people on the plains are hoping for. They just
Yeah.
want to be
You figure
competitive.
they should definitely get 4 wins in their out of conference games. Like that's
Oh yeah.
UMass at Cal, Samford, and New Mexico State. Absolutely should not
You
lose
hope
any of
that
those
not
games.
only those games if
Yeah.
you're a fan, but look good in those games.
Yeah. And then you'd have to steal 2 more, and you could say you get Ole Miss and State at home, at
You have
Vandy.
one of those. You have to win one of those for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then you
no,
have you.
at who knows? Georgia, chalk it up as a loss.
Mhm.
At LSU, I'm gonna chalk it up as a loss. Yeah, you would love it if you're an Auburn fan. You would love to win back to back against home games against Ole Miss and State.
Mhm.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Um,
At Vanderbilt, you have to win that one.
yeah. Although interestingly enough, they've lost their last 2 trips to Nashville. The last one
They
was
should,
2012, but
but I believe.
yeah, um, still weird. But yeah, yeah. If Hugh Freeze is what everyone says he is, then he should get them
Yeah,
back to a bowl.
yep.
But yeah,
It's a
uh,
tough. He came into a tough situation just because how
hmm
they've recruited, and you know, the Gus years were so up and down.
hmm
They did a little. They were always a thorn in our side, but other games they kind of you're like, is this the same team? But you know what? At least he'll have the excitement there, and they'll get the support that the last coaching staff definitely didn't get from the
no,
get go. I mean, he's a Southern guy, understands the SEC, he knows how to
hmm
recruit, so he has all that going for him. It's just a matter of does he put it all together and ever, contend. Well, by the time he's a contender, there won't be divisions, but will he be a SEC contender at some point?
hmm
Who
Yeah, and you
we'll
wonder
wait
too,
and see.
like, did they just hire a different version of Gus Malzahn? We just talked about it
Yeah,
with winning games maybe you shouldn't, but also losing games you shouldn't. So
yeah,
we'll see. Yeah,
we
and
shall see.
the 3 teams we haven't really dove in on. I don't think we really need to. Mississippi State, Missouri, and Vandy.
Hmm.
Pro-
Mississippi State, I guess Will Rogers is your big thing. I mean, he's
hmm
put up a plethora of numbers. Of course, that's a lot of. I mean, he's in that friendly air raid offense. So I mean, that gonna a lot of people can. But he's had a solid run there. New coach. That's gonna be a tough shoes to fill just because how big a personality Mike Leach was.
hmm
So I think Mississippi State. Who knows? Excuse me, what they will be this year, but if anything, they at least have a solid quarterback.
Yeah,
who,
and then Missouri. We know they took Georgia to the edge last year, but just don't know. That's just a tough division for them.
hmm
Um,
That it is. I like their coach though. I think Drink
mhm,
probably one of the at least one of those coaches that really doesn't do coach speak. He just kind of says what's on his mind,
mhm,
which is far and few in between these days in the world of coaching, especially in the SEC. But he's an entertaining guy. Got a big recruit yesterday there. Got a five star that I thought OU thought that they had locked up. So that but he's kind of in that situation now where it's either win or he might not be the coach next year.
Yeah,
Just
he's this will be his 4th year there, and they've gone 5-5, 6-7, 6-7 in his first
hmm
3 years. So yeah, mm, it's yeah. You got to go to a bowl. You got to
yeah,
win it, and you got to maybe do
hmm
better. Maybe you're looking for 8-4, 9-3 if
yeah,
you're really lucky. It's an
yeah,
interesting schedule for them. South Dakota, then Middle Tennessee to open the year, and then Kansas State, an old Big 8 rival. Big
yeah,
12, Big 8.
And
And
K
then,
State housed them last year.
yeah, it was not
Absolutely
pretty.
housed them.
40-12. And then Memphis and St. Louis, interesting.
Interesting, Jen.
Yeah, game there. Then
At Vandy.
at Vandy, so you could see them,
Now that's
5-0
could very well be
would be
5-0
good, and
going to LSU.
then you host LSU,
Yeah.
and that could
You
be
know,
a
they're
big, yeah.
5. Yeah. If they're 5-0
Mm-hmm.
and LSU's coming into town,
Yeah.
I'm assuming they probably somehow. I mean, I have to look at the rest of the SEC schedule because the times aren't set. You could see that as a prime time game in Columbia at night. Weird
Mm-hmm.
things have happened there.
Yeah, or maybe they get that. Really, if it's, I don't, again,
If it's
having
super hype,
the
the
2:30
2:30 slot.
at CBS, yeah, at Fairwell
Yeah.
Field. And then it gets a tricky schedule after that. Then they go at Kentucky the next week, South
Yeah.
Carolina at home, by
Oh,
at Georgia, Tennessee,
uh,
Florida at home, then at
mm.
Arkansas to end the year. So
Yeah.
they almost need to start 5-0.
They definitely need to because there's no, yeah, because
There's no
honestly,
gimmies after that.
yeah, they don't, yeah, they need to start 5-0 because to get to that sixth bowl eligibility, that's gonna be tough.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, K State and Memphis, even Vandy, not give me games.
Mm-mm.
So I mean, it could be, yeah. I mean, I think 8-4 is the ceiling. Uh, but I think he'll drink at least has to get to a bowl game to save his job this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I think that should do it for our SEC preview. We've been talking a while here. And real quick, anything else in the world of sports you want to touch on real quick before we go?
Just I guess the big thing was that James Harden comments today
Oh,
called him
phew.
Maury a liar twice in this thing.
Yeah, like I
Yikes.
said, yeah, the Sixers came out and said they will not trade James Harden, but he basically came out and said he's like, I ain't playing anyway. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah. Um,
that's a
some NFL free
fun one.
agency. It's Zeke Elliott.
Uh,
Looks like he's going to be
Zeke
with the
Elliott for the
Patriots.
Pats.
Devin,
Dalvin Cook for the Jets.
yeah. So that'll be interesting. The Rays, Wander Franco is put on the restriction list for some tweets, I guess, that allege that he had a relationship with an underage girl.
The 14-year-old,
Oof,
supposedly. I was
yeah.
like, whoa.
So they're investigating that right now. So their
But there's
best,
a lot of,
yeah,
yeah, that's one of those ones you don't really want to comment on till you know the facts because
yeah. And then
we
that's not
heard
a,
some weird stuff over the years.
yeah.
Um,
Let's see.
I was happy my Cowboys got the Zach Martin deal done.
Oh
I was
yeah,
like, Lord, if we go this
huge for
season
them.
without Zach
Yeah,
Martin,
that's huge.
because
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
not a way you want to start the year, but able to get that situated, so I was happy about that. But that's a lot of what's going on, just preseason and college hype.
yeah. And then I guess the Women's World Cup. We're to the semifinals.
Hmm.
Um,
Good
I believe
matchups.
tonight is Spain and Sweden, and then tomorrow will be Australia and England.
Hmm.
Australia, the home team, they're pushing through. Big
Yeah,
upset over
they did.
France in penalties.
Yeah, that was
Japan upset by Sweden. One of the favorites.
hmm
Sweden upset Japan, and now you know can the English, can the home team do it? Australia, can the English women do it? Spain's looking really good. Can Sweden keep their run going after upsetting the U.S. and Japan, two of the favorites?
yeah,
But yeah,
wide open.
wide open. And I think that's pretty much it. No other big news. Baseball rolling
No,
along. The Braves are still just hitting the shit out the
yeah,
ball. Uh,
yeah, y'all house this tonight.
yeah, yeah. They did lose Ozzy Albies tonight. He's going on the 10-day disabled list, hamstring
Yeah.
injury of some sort, strain, I think is what they called it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so we'll go ahead and get to our close. Greg, what has been done up real good for you this week?
Well, it's crazy. Past week, my daughter turned 15,
Oof.
able to get her driver's permit, started high school. So big,
Oh
big,
no.
big things ahead of time.
Oh no. Oh man.
Yeah.
Good luck to you, sir, and dealing with that.
How about, how about you?
Done real good. I'm glad to be back home in the AC. Worked a outdoor festival in Houston this past weekend, and what was
Temperatures
apparently
have
the
really been
hottest
brutal.
weekend on record in Houston, and it
Oh,
felt
great.
that way. No
That's
joke.
just what you want to hear, though, right? It's already known as a hot area, but the hottest.
Yeah. Oh man, and
Ain't
you know,
bad.
and it was right there at City Hall, like on concrete. You know, just.
Yeah.
But we
No,
made
no,
it through. Um,
nice.
ate some damn fine food.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Houston has excellent food.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Houston has some fire food. I was there for just literally a couple days to work and get back home, but it was a good time.
Mm,
Worked with
awesome.
some old friends, so that was good. But that'll do it for us this week, folks. Feel free to break this one up into listening parts, because I see our running time's almost 2 hours. Uh, Next time out, we will, let's see, I guess we've covered all the big things. Maybe the next time out, we'll touch a little bit on like Notre Dame and some other non-power
Yeah.
schools that maybe can make some noise this year. And then I guess we'll give you some college football playoff predictions. Why not? So you can go and bet against us and make some money for yourselves.
And win some.
There you go. Uh,
Double up.
we do thank you once again. As always, tell your friends about us. Anyone you think would like us, subscribe, give us good ratings on wherever you listen to us. Check out all the other good podcasts on the Alabama Take family of networks, including The Stare Down, A New Day on Friday, I believe, Alabama Slam, A New Day on Wednesday. Taking It Down, I believe, returns at the end of the month. They're taking a little hiatus. We Are Star Wars come back, a couple episodes on Star Wars. This Song Sucks is out there. So yeah, check out everything on. We'll probably be shooting out some information too at some point before the season kicks off about our annual college pick'em, so you can jump in on that. But yeah, as always, keep it done up real good out there yourselves, folks. Greg, take it easy, buddy.
All right, buddy.